The mystery of the Sumerians, the world's first civilization. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that everything you know about modern civilization already existed 5,000 years ago. The wheel, writing, mathematics, the legal system, medicine, even your 8-hour workday and the 60 minutes in each hour. Everything comes from a people so advanced that they disappeared without leaving any trace of their origin. Today we're going to solve one of history's greatest enigmas. Who were the Sumerians, really? Where did these people who called themselves the black-headed people come from? And most disturbing, why did they know so much? The discovery that changed everything year. 1850, Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. European archaeologists dig in the desert searching for evidence of biblical stories when they find something impossible. Entire cities buried beneath the sand. Gigantic temples, palaces, sophisticated irrigation canals, and thousands of tablets with writing that nobody can read. But here's what's disturbing. These remains are older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than any civilization known at that time. For over 2,000 years, the Sumerians were completely forgotten by history. They only existed in vague mentions by ancient writers and in some passages of the biblical Genesis. Humanity had completely lost the memory of its true founders. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what they called the Fertile Crescent, this mysterious people built something never seen before. The world's first true cities, not large villages, cities, with walls, monumental temples, sewage systems, organized governments, and even commercial districts. And here's the first mystery. The Sumerians were never a unified nation. They never had a Sumerian empire as such. They were a collection of independent city-states: Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Lagash, Nippur, each with its own king, its own laws, and its own patron gods. These cities were fierce rivals. Their borders were marked by water canals, and they constantly fought for control of fertile lands and irrigation rights. The enigma of their origin. Now comes the part that drives historians crazy and has generated all kinds of theories, from scientific to the most fantastical. Nobody knows where the Sumerians came from. They called themselves Sagiga, which means the black-headed people. The Sumerian king Shulgi described himself as the king of the four quarters, the shepherd of the black-headed people. But they never explained where they originally came from. The African theory suggests they migrated from the Green Sahara when the climate changed and the desert began expanding about 7,000 years ago. According to this hypothesis, they would have been responsible for bringing agriculture to the Middle East. But there's a problem. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests that agriculture originated in the Fertile Crescent, not that it was imported from Africa. The Asian theory became stronger in 2013, when genetic analysis of 4 ancient Mesopotamian skeletons showed a surprising relationship with the Indus Valley civilization in what is now India and Pakistan. This would make sense because we know that trade routes existed between Mesopotamia and the Indus since very ancient times. Some scholars even associate them with the Hurrians and Urartians of the Caucasus, suggesting they came from the mountains between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. But here's what's truly strange. Their language doesn't resemble anything known in human history. It's not Semitic like Arabic or Hebrew. It's not Indo-European like English, Spanish, or Hindi. It has no relationship with any known linguistic group. Linguists classify it as an isolated language. It's as if they appeared out of nowhere, speaking a language that nobody else on the planet spoke. And most baffling, they arrived already knowing how to build complex cities, with a developed writing system, with advanced astronomical and mathematical knowledge, with sophisticated agricultural techniques. There was no observable gradual evolution. There's no evidence of a primitive phase. They simply appeared already civilized. The first city and the concept of civilization. The Sumerians invented something we take for granted today, the very concept of city. According to the Sumerians themselves, the world's first city was Eridu, founded around 5,400 BC by Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh water. For them, Eridu was like a kind of golden age, comparable to the biblical Garden of Eden. In Eridu, Enki established the concept of order and kingship. It was the birthplace of the first rules of government and civilization. But modern archaeology points to Uruk as the oldest and largest city. Uruk, mentioned in the Bible as Erech, was the innovation epicenter of the ancient world. Listen to these numbers. Uruk had a walled area of 6.5 square kilometers. Its population fluctuated between 50,000 and 80,000 inhabitants. It was the largest city in the world at its time. To put it in perspective, Paris in the year 1200 AD had barely 25,000 inhabitants. Uruk had triple that 5,000 years ago. And in Uruk, the wheel appeared around 3,500 BC, forever changing transportation and pottery. 200 years later, in 3,300 BC, writing appeared. The oldest clay tablets with cuneiform writing discovered so far come from Uruk. According to tradition, Uruk was home to Gilgamesh, the hero of humanity's oldest literary epic. Their inventions that changed the world. Get ready, because the list of what the Sumerians invented is simply absurd. The wheel, not just the transportation wheel, but also the potter's wheel that allowed mass production of ceramics. This revolutionized trade. Cuneiform writing. They beat Egypt by less than a century. It began as simple pictograms for keeping commercial accounts, but evolved into a complete system capable of expressing abstract ideas, poetry, laws, and science. This writing system was adopted by later civilizations and was used for more than 3,000 years. The plow. The first plow appeared around 3,500 BC. But wait, because 2,000 years later, they invented the seed plow, which allowed tilling the land and planting at the same time. It even came with usage instructions engraved on tablets explaining how to increase crop yields. Modern mathematics. The Sumerians invented a complex system of metrology in 3000 BC that was the basis for arithmetic, geometry, and algebra. Why does an hour have 60 minutes? Why does a minute have 60 seconds? Why does a circle have 360 degrees? All because of the Sumerian sexagesimal system based on the number 60. They developed the abacus. They were the first to use a positional numeration system, like the one we use now. They wrote multiplication tables and solved division and geometry problems on clay tablets. The chariot. The Sumerians invented the first war chariots, although they were more like heavy carts with 4 solid wheels, each constructed by assembling 3 pieces of wood. They were driven by 2 men and pulled by 4 onagers, a kind of wild donkey. But here comes something fascinating. When Sargon of Akkad conquered Sumer around 2271 BC, he revolutionized military tactics. The Sumerians were accustomed to hand-to-hand combat with swords and spears. They couldn't cope with the powerful bow and arrow attack of the Akkadians. Sargon was a pioneer in beginning battles with a massive arrow attack before hand-to-hand combat. He was also the first to use scouts to avoid ambushes and to build strategic fortresses. And this is what fascinates me most. Advanced astronomy. The Sumerians had the first astronomers and developed something similar to the first heliocentric vision on record. For them, the sun, moon, and 5 visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, rotated in a specific order. 5,000 years ago, they were already mapping the night sky and understanding celestial patterns. This should not be possible with the technology they supposedly had, the daily life and their society. But what was it really like to live in Sumer? Sumerian society was deeply hierarchical. At the top was the patesi, or king, who accumulated civil, military, and religious power. He wasn't just a political ruler. He was the intermediary between the gods and the people. The patesi controlled the construction of great works like temples, dikes, irrigation canals, and food storage facilities. He had absolute freedom to impose tributes and decide the fate of resources. Below the king was an elite of priests, military chiefs, and high-ranking officials. Then came merchants, minor officials, and specialized artisans. At the lowest level were slaves, who did the hardest work. The Sumerians cultivated barley, wheat, millet, chickpeas, lentils. They grew turnips, leeks, dates, mustard, and poppies. They raised sheep, goats, cows, and pigs. They used oxen for heavy work and donkeys as transport animals. They fished in the Tigris, Euphrates, and canals. They hunted birds on the riverbanks and in the marshes. But their agriculture was completely dependent on artificial irrigation. The floods of the Tigris and Euphrates were violent and unpredictable. That's why they built a massive system of canals, ponds, and dikes. Maintaining these canals was constant work. Slaves and those condemned to forced labor spent their days dredging canals, repairing dikes, and cleaning drainage systems. After the spring equinox, they opened the canals to irrigate the fields. Then they drained the water and brought domestic animals to trample and kill weeds before plowing and sowing. At the heart of each city was the ziggurat, a stepped pyramid of mud bricks that served as a temple. The oldest preserved one is in Kashan, Iraq, and dates from the 3rd millennium BC. The Sumerians believed the gods had created order from chaos, and that each person's mission was to help maintain that order. The gods expected humans to work together for the common good. Among their main deities were An, god of the sky; Namu, the mother goddess; Inanna, goddess of love and war; Enki, protective god of men and fresh waters. And they had fascinating beliefs. They thought plants grew while a male god was mating with a goddess. They believed the gods died in summer to be resurrected in spring. That's why their year began in spring, celebrated with great rites and songs. Sumerian medicine and science. Sumerian medicine was a strange mix of superstition and real practical knowledge. The Sumerians considered that an illness was caused by a demon trapped inside the body. Its attempts to escape caused pain and symptoms. So what was the treatment? Make the body such an undesirable place that the demon would want to leave. They placed a goat or lamb near the sick person so that when the demon left the human body, it would find new lodging. When animals weren't available, a statue served the same purpose. But they also had real medical knowledge. A tablet found in Nippur could be humanity's first medical manual. The Sumerians widely used laxatives and diuretics. Their pharmacology was based on animal, plant, and mineral substances. They mixed saltpeter, milk, powdered cobra skin, turtle shell with vegetables like cassia, myrtle, willow, pear, fig, fir, and dates. This basic preparation was combined with wine to make a topical cream, or with beer to ingest it. It sounds primitive, but remember, they were experimenting with chemical compounds 4,000 years ago. The Epic of Gilgamesh, and then there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, humanity's oldest literary work. It's a narrative in Akkadian verse, based on 5 independent Sumerian poems. It tells the story of Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, who embarks on dangerous adventures with his best friend Enkidu. When Enkidu dies in his prime, Gilgamesh is devastated. Obsessed with his own mortality, he embarks on an epic journey seeking immortality. His quest leads him to Utnapishtim, a wise man who survived the flood that extinguished humanity. Wait, flood that extinguished humanity? Yes, the Epic of Gilgamesh contains the oldest version of the universal flood myth. In the Sumerian story, the gods decide to destroy humanity with a flood. But Enki warns Utnapishtim, who builds a giant boat by divine order, saves his family and many animals. The waters cover the earth for days. Afterward, the boat lands on a mountain. Utnapishtim sends birds to search for dry land. The world begins anew. Sound familiar? The story of Noah in the biblical Genesis is almost identical in structure, details, and sequence of events. But the Sumerian version is older by more than 1,000 years. The authors of Genesis clearly based their work on Mesopotamian traditions. The Sumerians wrote about the flood first, the conquest, and the end year, 2334 BC. One man changes everything. Sargon of Akkad, a young warrior of mysterious origin, defeats King Lugal-Zaggisi of Umma with an army of 5,000 men, and founds history's first multinational empire, the Akkadian Empire. The Akkadians were an Eastern Semitic people, culturally different from the Sumerians. They spoke Akkadian, a Semitic language. But they adopted Sumerian cuneiform writing and much of their culture. For 150 years, Akkadians and Sumerians coexisted, sometimes in conflict, sometimes in peace. The Akkadian Empire extended from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. But the Akkadian Empire collapsed. And then came the Sumerian Renaissance. Between 2154 and 2004 BC, Sumers shone again under the third dynasty of Ur. They developed an impressive government bureaucracy, detailed contracts, accounting systems, salary records, tax control, strategic food reserves. Abraham, the biblical patriarch, supposedly was born in Ur during this time, but it wouldn't last. The Amorites gained power in Babylon. Hammurabi came to the throne in 1792 BC and changed the entire theological structure, elevating the male god Marduk as supreme, reversing the balance of the Sumerian pantheon. Sumerian culture was already in decline when the Elamites invaded from the east, from present-day Iran. Around 1750 BC, Sumerian civilization disappeared, but their legacy survived. The Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, all adopted Sumerian cuneiform writing, which continued to be used as a legal and religious language for more than 1,000 years after the last Sumerian died. So next time you look at the clock and see it's 3:45, remember that those 60 minutes and 60 seconds come from Sumer. When you read a book, remember that writing was born between the Tigris and Euphrates. When you see a wheel, a legal contract, a medical prescription, or admire the stars knowing that Earth revolves around the sun, remember the black-headed people, a people who appeared out of nowhere. speaking a language nobody else spoke, with knowledge they shouldn't have, and who created almost everything that defines modern civilization. They built the first cities. They wrote the first laws. They told the first stories. And then they disappeared, leaving more questions than answers buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia. Where did they really come from? Why did they appear already civilized? What other secrets await beneath those ruins? Perhaps we'll never know for certain. But one thing is clear. We owe them everything. If this video blew your mind, give it a like and subscribe. Leave me in the comments your theory about the origin of the Sumerians. Africa, Asia, the Caucasus, or something more mysterious. Remember, a people that doesn't know its history is condemned to repeat it. See you in the next video.